The movie starts with Elizabeth, a well-known TV actress, coming home after a tiring day at work. As soon as she steps inside, she talks on the phone with someone. Then the scene changes to another part of town. Here, we see Grace, a middle-aged woman, cooking in the kitchen with another lady. A few minutes later, her husband Joe comes in, and Grace kindly asks him to help by setting the table. It's clear they are getting ready for an important guest that night. Soon, a shiny black car stops in front of their house. Elizabeth steps out, looking stylish, and rings the doorbell. When no one answers, she walks around to the backyard. There, she meets Grace and greets her with a warm smile and a polite hello. Grace, cheerful as ever, introduces her to Joe. Elizabeth gives him a small gift as a thank you gesture. Grace tells her to relax and chat with the people there, saying she'll join her soon. As Elizabeth walks around the house with her notebook, she writes down notes about the surroundings. A group of excited teenagers notices her and rushes over, thrilled to meet a TV star. They happily talk with her. Sitting nearby, Elizabeth watches Grace and Joe having a good time with the guests. Soon, a local woman talks to Elizabeth and explains how much people in the area respect Grace. She describes Grace as kind, helpful, and generous. From this, we learn that Elizabeth is doing research for a new movie where she will play Grace's character. Later, Elizabeth finds some old magazines and articles about Grace from years ago. She is amazed by how beautiful and graceful she used to look. Wanting to play the role perfectly, she starts studying Grace's behavior closely. Meanwhile, Joe is seen watching one of Elizabeth's old TV ads over and over before going to bed with Grace. The next morning, Joe is outside collecting fallen leaves and taking photos, which he sends to someone on his phone. Meanwhile, Elizabeth meets Grace again and helps her arrange flowers in the house. Curious, Grace asks why Elizabeth wants to act as her in the movie. Elizabeth replies that Grace's personality feels very special and inspires her deeply. During dinner, Elizabeth praises Grace's cooking. Grace smiles and shares how she learned her recipes over the years. But the table suddenly becomes tense when Grace's son, Charlie, gets upset with her strict behavior and leaves without finishing his meal. Elizabeth pauses but says she has many questions to ask. Grace tells her to go ahead, so Elizabeth asks how she and Joe first met. The couple shares their story with happy smiles. Later, Elizabeth leaves the house and sees Joe outside. She walks over and starts a light chat, mentioning that they are both 36 years old. She says while he already has kids in college, she is only now thinking of starting a family. Joe doesn't really answer and quickly ends the talk, glancing back at the house nervously. Back at her place, Elizabeth makes another phone call, talking about her meeting with Grace. The next day, she meets Tom, Grace's ex-husband, at a coffee shop. With her notebook ready, she starts asking about Grace's past. Tom explains that they first met at a bar, fell in love, and later got engaged. When Elizabeth asks if he was happy with her, Tom says yes, at least in the beginning. But things changed when Grace started a scandalous relationship with a much younger boy. He tells her that Grace was once caught and arrested at a pet store with that boy. After this, Tom ended their relationship and moved on with his life. Later, Elizabeth meets Grace again at a shopping mall. Grace asks if she has met Tom, and Elizabeth honestly says yes. Grace then gives her a box of old family photos. That night, Elizabeth looks at the photos carefully. Driven by curiosity, she visits the same pet store where Grace was arrested. The owner shows her the storeroom, and Elizabeth tries to imagine what might have happened there. Meanwhile, Joe finds an old letter among his things and later spends the evening watching TV alone. Elizabeth keeps going through the photos and meets Joe again in a room. They talk briefly, and before leaving, she jokes that she can imagine what he looked like as a boy. Joe seems uneasy about this and leaves quickly. After that, Elizabeth meets Henderson, a lawyer who once represented Grace. He tells her how Grace openly admitted she was in love with the boy and claimed she did nothing wrong. From there, Elizabeth visits a local school where students ask her about her acting career and the many roles she has played over the years. After visiting the school, Elizabeth goes back home with Mary. While Mary settles in, Elizabeth starts writing down all the products and items Grace uses for her makeovers. She wants to learn everything about her habits and style. During this time, Grace decides to give Elizabeth a little makeover herself. She applies some makeup on her, styles her hair, and adds her own charm to the look. As they talk, Grace asks about Elizabeth's parents. Elizabeth tells her that her parents work in the field of books. They write and publish them. Soon after, Grace tells Joe to remove the small hidden bugs he had placed around the house earlier. Elizabeth hears this and offers to help. Joe agrees, and while they work together, he explains why he had installed those devices in the first place. His explanation makes Elizabeth curious and impressed. Together, they go from room to room, taking the bugs out. Later, both of them are seen walking quietly in the woods. Elizabeth says he is lucky to have such a wonderful family. Joe, being honest for a moment, tells her how people started treating them differently after the scandal in the past, almost as if they were criminals. He admits that back then, he was not like other boys his age, and the affair was something he entered into willingly. That evening, Joe comes home and hears Grace crying softly upstairs. He asks her what's wrong. Grace explains that one of the neighbors canceled their cake order at the last minute. She had spent hours baking it, and now it would go to waste. We also learn that this neighbor often orders from her only to keep her busy, more like an act of pity than real support. Joe comforts her and says the upcoming movie with Elizabeth will help people understand their side of the story. Grace offers him a slice of the cake, and he tells her it tastes wonderful. Meanwhile, Elizabeth talks to her colleague over the phone, saying that the story is moving forward as planned. The next day, Joe and his daughter go to pick up his elder daughter from the airport. Later, Joe is seen on the rooftop with his son. His son is preparing to leave for college with his sister. They share a smoke together, something Joe had never done with him before. That same day, Elizabeth returns to the house. She and Grace bake a cake together. Grace carefully teaches her every step of the process. As they talk, Grace unexpectedly shares something personal. Joe had affairs with other women in the past. This surprises Elizabeth, especially since Joe was quite young back then. Grace then shows her a card Joe once gave her. It had a sweet message written on it. Peace is sitting by a lake in the summertime. Peace is a Coca-Cola on a hot summer day. Peace is being with you. Later that night, the whole family, along with Elizabeth, goes out for dinner to celebrate the children's graduation. Grace expresses how proud she is of her children and wishes them a bright future. She even raises a toast to Elizabeth, thanking her for being part of this special moment. Elizabeth replies with excitement, saying she looks forward to sharing their story with the world. At the same restaurant, Tom, Grace's ex-husband, arrives with his family. Grace greets them kindly before returning to her table. After dinner, Joe drives everyone home. Elizabeth waits for him to return so he can give her a ride back. While she waits, Georgie, Tom's son, approaches her. He offers to share secrets about Grace's brothers in exchange for a music supervisor role in her film. Elizabeth is confused by his sudden offer. At that moment, Joe arrives and she leaves with him. On the way, Joe notices her struggling with her asthma and helps fix her inhaler. He also hands her an envelope, an old letter from Grace to him, but warns her not to open it. In that tense moment, Elizabeth kisses him and suggests that he could start his life over again. Their closeness quickly turns intimate, and they end up in bed together. Later, Joe returns home and sits beside Grace. She asks him about the unspoken things between them. He says there's a lot they have never talked about. Surprised, she asks him to sit closer. He wonders aloud, what if he was too young back then? Grace, calm and direct, says, "You were the one who seduced me," and adds that she never cared about his age. It was his choice too. Meanwhile, Elizabeth starts sinking deeper into Grace's character. She even reads the letter aloud to herself. In that letter, Grace had written about her forbidden love for Joe. She admitted she was married with children and knew it could cause harm. Yet, she confessed that their relationship was rare and special, and even though it was wrong, she felt they would cross that line again. She loved him and believed he loved her back too. The next morning, Joe wakes up to find Grace missing from their bed. In the kitchen, he sees their children getting ready for the graduation ceremony. Grace, however, is somewhere else, walking in the woods holding a gun. Grace points the gun at a target in the woods, but decides not to shoot. She lowers the weapon and walks away quietly. A little later, Joe drops the children off at the graduation ceremony and goes out to look for her. At the ceremony, Grace is already there, smiling proudly as she takes photos of her children receiving their degrees. Joe watches from a distance, his eyes heavy with emotion, as if remembering everything they had been through as a family. Before leaving, Elizabeth meets Grace one last time. She tells her that she is heading to the airport. Grace looks at her and asks softly, "Do you understand me now?" Elizabeth nods and replies, "Yes, I do." In the final scene, we see Elizabeth on a movie set, dressed as Grace, acting out her life story for the film. The cameras roll as the real-life story finally turns into a movie.
Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.